Hey guys, I'm Flood. I'm going to help you today with some theory on how to defend compounds properly. I've seen this requested a few times, and I'm assuming that people would like some extra information on how to defend your compound properly. So we're going to keep it nice and short and sweet, and let's get right into the video. Alright, we're going to have a little general overview of today's topic. We're going to focus into four categories: what, when, where, and why. I think for what it's really important to know the layout of our compound, what angles we have, and then when should we expect a breach, when we need to defend, when we should be looting. Looting is a big mistake I see quite frequently, and when to puffer, and I can explain that later. And then for where, we have where should we allocate our resources and where is the most vulnerable position. So this is more of thinking how do we actually set up for the crash. So it's where is probably the most important part. And then of course why, and the only reason that why is such an important part is because in this video I can only go over one or two examples, but if you can apply these principles you should be able to understand how to defend your own compounds because you can create your own thought processes. Alright guys, we're going to go over this compound that I like to call Hacker, and we're going to view the angles and what our buildings look like. So we have each viewpoint, and we can reference south side to the one, so this is where the camera is panned from. But we can see on our south side we have good windows in the second floor, in the grandma, and in our bottom floor. So they're the main angles we're working with. When it comes to the west side, we have lots of windows, guys, on the west side. We have plenty of places to peek from, and that means that west is one of our stronger sides to defend. When it comes to east, we have the exact same thing, as this compound is very protected on the west and the east. But when it comes to north and south, there's slightly less angles that we are able to see from. Always keep that in mind because this is important for prepping where we're getting breached from. The next topic is when should we expect breaches. I think it's very simple for us to understand when we're going to get breached if we purely place ourselves in the position of our opponents. If our opponents need to make a decision to get into zone, they are more likely to breach us than if they do not have to do anything. So when we set up our zone defense, let's press M and see who actually has to do something. That's probably the easiest way to predict when we're going to get breached, if at all. So press M, look at who needs to make decisions. For example, in this photo, all of our south and our east needs to make a decision. So we can expect at some point for people or enemies to be on that side of the zone. When it comes to puffering, puffering's a term where we appear bigger than we are by shooting bullets and letting people know we are there. This can be very useful in public matches because we can bait teams in by having only one person shoot when we're 4 people strong, and the same applies the other way around. We can have 4 people shooting so no one wants to crash us. And for the final part of when we should be doing something is when should we be looting in a compound. Please don't loot immediately. Don't be silly. Have a quick look around you. Check your closest compounds. If you have vision on the close compounds and you have no one in sight, go ahead, loot with a carefree attitude. You're welcome to loot. But it happens very often where public players will loot immediately, even competitive players do this to be honest, where you loot immediately without any information, and it can cause for some funky timings. And also, don't forget to park your cars. Tires are super important, especially when we need to rotate in late game. When it comes to defending our compounds, we need to be able to identify the threat and where we're actually going to get breached. Where do we need to put our resources? In this case of the compound Hacker, one of our most vulnerable positions is the south side. So what does that look like? Well, whenever we have a threat, we need to address 3 people on the threat. What might that look like? Well, when defending compounds, you can get very creative, but make sure you keep the principle the same. 3 people at the threat. As an example here, we might have 1 person in the ice cream and 2 people in this double, 1 first floor and 1 second floor, and 1 in this ice cream, just so they can peek out left or peek out right. Now, when we're greeting teams breaching us, hopefully we're able to get a knock or 2, especially if we have players who have separate angles. It makes it harder for people to seat swap us, because if they're focusing one player, the other player should be able to trade. It's also very important that our anchor sits in our compound, the building furthest away, and that is because we don't want teams wrapping all the way around, which is not extremely relevant in this compound, purely because this wall is quite a pain to deal with. But in other compounds, it is a very big issue. So make sure we have 1 person anchoring and just be on the far side, and it's not that big of a deal because our person in the double can just run to the grandma and help. So that would change our structure into a 2-1-1. And we only do that when we know where all 4 players are. So if we have a call that all 4 people have breached outside the buildings, we can then start to move over and start to, enclose on them. So that is a good way to think about defending our compounds, is if we have a weak side, which we know is a weak side, let's put as many people on that side as possible, because we want to try and get a knock out of the cars, which will immediately improve our odds of winning a fight. If we knock 2 people out of the cars, that's a 4v2. If we knock one, it's a 3v4. We can really start to press our advantages, especially if they don't have much to work with. All right, now that we've gone over our weak side, we can discuss, the normal sides, or the strong sides. When we have stronger sides where we have buildings that really dictate a lot of the vision and angles, we don't need to stress too much about putting 3 people on, at the threat, because it's not necessarily relevant. We can have 2 people in each of the guard buildings. So, for example, if we're getting breached on the east, we do probably want 2 people in each of these doubles, as it really does limit where this team can play. If they pull up on this wall, we can have players start to run behind. If they pull up on this spot, we have perfect line of sights and great ways to utility them. So the difference between weak sides and strong sides is, on strong sides we're going to prioritize the buildings that give us the most vision, and on weak sides we want to have numbers there because we don't actually have that many angles to peek from, so we want to make sure we have the numbers physically there to greet them. Whereas strong sides, prioritize the buildings that have the most amount of vision, and that's really going to help you the most. Alright, finishing up on our takeaways and really why, and understanding why we do things. The vision and angle of buildings will affect our setups, guys. If we are not able to see much, it is not a good position. We need to make sure that our position is able to have as many angles, or at least cut off angles from the opposing team. Secondly, predicting where the breach is going to come from, which is mostly done by just opening your map and figuring out what teams need to make decisions and when they are likely to make decisions. That will really help your defensive structures, because you're going to be ready for teams to breach, which means that if they do breach you, you're prepared, and it's going to be a quick wipe if you're able to set up properly. We're going back to the 3-1s, guys. 3-1s are a fantastic way of addressing threats and limiting opportunities. So when it comes to defending compounds, like we discussed in the videos, having one person on the far side of our compound is a good way to anchor, as they can come closer as information transpires. But we always want 3 people addressing the threat, because, as number 5 says, greeting the breach is the most important thing when it comes to maintaining control of the fight. So we want to make sure we're trying to get knocks out of cars, so we can dictate the momentum of the fight. And the final point, which I skipped a little bit, oopsies, information is super pivotal in this game, guys, especially when it comes to defending compounds. Don't be afraid to rat. And not only that, you can give information of only one person being in the compound to bait confidence and make teams skip steps, like they might not clear specific buildings or specific angles, which will give you an opening, which will give you the ability to take control of the fight. So really take into account all 5 of these points, because if you apply these principles, you can pretty much identify every single compound in the game across all the maps. It's very straightforward. It applies to pretty much every compound. So you can apply these principles yourself and hopefully learn a bit more and learn more efficiently. So thank you guys for watching. If you want to reach out to me, and you're welcome to, my Discord is Flood PUBG. As far as donations or support goes, that's fine. It's free, guys. Just keep watching videos. The best thing you can do is suggest what you actually want to see, because I have no idea what to make. I'm pretty bad when it comes to making content, so be very specific on what you want to see, and if I get enough requests for it, I'll just make a video. Thank you very much.